Canon Story Company presents Page and Stage, the podcast that explores the art and craft of writing and performance. I'm your host, Jason Cannon, and if you want to learn more about why stories matter and how to tell yours, come visit me at canonstory.com. That's CANNON story.com. A quick reminder that I put links to each guest's full bio, websites, and projects in the show notes, so be sure to go check them out. Now, let's meet our guest for this episode of the Page and Stage podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Page and Stage podcast. As you just heard in the intro, I'm your host, Jason Cannon, and we have a treat today. This is Courtney Stasko. I've been working with Courtney for, oh my gosh, has it been like over a year? It's been a while. Like, time is so wild when we do all these workshops and
Yeah, it's been about a year now.
yeah, I think so. We met at an Own Every Room, I think, and the stories around the campfire. And Courtney, I will never forget the first time I heard you tell your story. It's just one of those where the power of storytelling becomes so clear, and also just your particular voice just struck me as so potent. I often, when we're jamming together or on group calls, how many times have I said, "You just make me so angry, Courtney. Like, I wish I had put it that way. I wish I had thought of that line."
Throw the pen out.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm so excited to share you with my listeners and my audience out here. So everyone listening, it's going to be a slightly different episode this time. We'll still have our interview portion, but I've asked Courtney to actually also just tell her story. She is preparing for a TED Talk, a TEDx, very soon. It's just like in a few weeks, right?
Yeah, it's like 3 weeks away now.
Woo!
Freaking out.
That's all right. Freaking out's this is the correct response. I'm going to let Courtney tell her story for all of you, and so you can have a real strong sense of what it is we're talking about when we talk about storytelling. Before we get to your story, though, Courtney, something so fun in your bio. I usually start these by asking the guest to give us their origin story. You're like a director or an actor or an author, that moment where you knew you had to tell stories for a living. You actually are a scientist by training and a poet by necessity, scientist by day, Batman at night. Tell us a little bit about your background here, Courtney. What, a scientist by training, but also your way around the English language. How did you then become a poet as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my background is heavily in the science field. A microbiologist trained. I used to play with bacteria in the lab and do a whole bunch of efficacy testing and all the stuff. And then I still do that, only now I work more on supply chain and I work in healthcare and I do all the sourcing for the laboratories. So all the commodities and the equipment for like the second biggest hospital in the world. And it's fantastic because I still get to use the science brain only with the business brain. But as we all know, life is crazy and it will throw constant curveballs at you and a lot of upsetting turns and grief and challenges. And one thing I've always gravitated to was poetry and writing. And it started as journaling just to myself. And as things got more complicated, I got more into expressing through words. And a lot of that poetry I don't even necessarily share out, but it helps my brain process it. It helps my emotions go into this deep place. And I probably started writing poetry like hard when I was 16. And I have book after book after book after book of poetry just stashed in the corner. And it wasn't until like within the last year that I actually started sharing it out to people. And they were like, "Hey, this is really good." And I was like, "You think?" And I just very much enjoy expressing through arts as much as possible. And so poetry has been such a tool for me. Writing has been such a tool for me. I'm not always the best at articulating my words. I like to make up words and everyone makes fun of me for that. But if I actually could just piece something down and to write it, my brain will process it a lot better. And it's just been such a joy to evolve over the last couple decades in my writing skills and understand poetry even more.
Don't feel bad about making up words. Shakespeare was famous for making up words whenever he needed to. That's
Yeah,
part of how our language keeps evolving.
that's what I say. And I also say, like, people understand me. When I make up a word, they know exactly what I'm saying. So I just think I'm smart and they can deal with it.
All right. So, scientist by day, secret poet. I'm so glad you've started pulling it. You're not going to pull an Emily Dickinson on us and, never have your poems out while you're still with us. Um, how did you then transition from poetry? I don't want to give away your story necessarily just yet, but you've gotten now into storytelling. You and I met through On Every Room in the Take the Mic program, which I probably talk about ad nauseum on here. But so many people that I've been interviewing recently and people that I've been meeting and working with um, aren't coming necessarily from the theater or the creative fields or those worlds. They're coming from professional worlds, different, blue collar, white collar worlds, and finding storytelling, kind of as you said, Courtney, as a way to actually figure out what they even think or feel, as a way to process things that are traumatic or difficult or shocking, as a way to feel more grounded, to kind of almost do some self healing. I loved how
Yeah.
you said that it started out just as journaling. I know there's a million journals out there, but I can speak for it too, that even just logging what you did during the day just kind of brings you back to a place of being in the present. Um, so, what got you into Own Every Room and Take the Mic? How did you transition from secret poet to very public storyteller who's about to get into that TEDx red circle?
Yeah, really, it comes down to the amazing Scott Man. I was blessed enough to connect with him. Maybe my story comes with so much tragedy that someone needed to link me with him. So, really, what happened, my best friend, she is an executive vice president, and she was the president of a board that they hired Scott to be their keynote speaker for. And she was afterwards, they were having dinner or a breakdown, and she was like, "You need to meet my best friend." And he was like, "Bring her to one of the plays." And so we actually went from Cleveland, Ohio down to Franklin, Tennessee back in 2023.
Yeah.
And he invited me to Last Out, and I met the amazing Holly Higgins and Carrie and Monty and the whole crew. And they asked me in the tunnel before the play to share my story, and I think I was able to get out like one sentence.
Mhm.
And they invited me to the workshop the next day, and I said, "No way, Jose, I can't do that. I'm not ready for that. I don't want to talk about this." Went out that night and we just had a good time, me and my best friend. And after that, I very much regretted that. I was just kind of kicking myself, like, why wouldn't I do that? But I just wasn't ready. I had
Mhm.
to go through some things, and I was still in intense therapy and still coping through some of the things I was going through. And then about January of 2025, Holly, being so poignant and as she is, reached out to me again and said, "Hey, we're going to be in Ohio. I know you're from there. Can you come to the Generosity of Scars workshop?" And I said, "Yes, I will be there. I just started a new job, but I was like, I will figure it out." And I went to the Generosity of Scars workshop in January of 2025, and everything has trajected in such a powerful way since then. It's just been absolutely amazing to see the evolution that could take place within a year and a half.
Within a
It's almost
year and a half. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's almost
it's
been mind
incredible.
blowing. Yeah, it is. It's just the things that have unfolded since then. It's almost not believable that it's only been a year and a half. It's like it's only been that long because it feels like so much has happened in that time frame. And as it's been going on, it's been so healing and therapeutic and expressive, and all of these things that have just unleashed this person who was stuck, which was me. I was just stuck in this rut for
Mhm.
years. And now I'm just soaring, and it feels so freeing and so absolutely amazing. And I am so blessed for Scott and the crew and everyone. I just can't even come up with words, which is ironic because I think I am a wordsmith.
Yeah.
And then I have something like this and I'm like, thank you. And that is all I could come up with. So yeah.
Yeah, so in a year and a half, and we'll get to more of this too after your story, Courtney. Not just getting onto a TEDx stage, but starting a new nonprofit, writing and publishing a book. We're going to talk about that very soon too. But something you said that I just want to touch on before we jump into your story here, Courtney, that in 2023 you weren't ready. Right, we talk about this a lot when it comes to storytelling, and especially scar storytelling, repurposing your pain in the service of others. Um, that the way Scott puts it is that if it's still too white hot, right? If it's still like a gaping wound, that's not a story you're ready to tell yet. It actually, you won't be able to tell it. Like you said, you might get a word or two out, but it's gonna suck you back down into the abyss. Once that wound kind of closes into scab, you might be able to start thinking about it, but it's still not a story that's going to be accessible to you. But once it's a scar, you've got a little bit of that narrative distance,
Mm.
and you've kind of worked through the most serious parts of the pain. Suddenly now the story doesn't just heal you, it heals other people. The way I like to think about it for myself sometimes is that if the story is a horse, that you start out by it's dragging you and then somehow you get on its back and you're hanging on for dear life, and then you can ride, you can do some dressage. But
Yeah.
that's when you can actually tell the story, is once you're actually riding and you're in a rhythm with your story. uh so I just want to, for everyone listening, the fact that Courtney said I'm not ready in 2023, that's actually highly self-aware. That's important to know and to understand. Sometimes a story, it just isn't ready to be birthed yet, and that's okay. That's okay, because when it is ready, man, you can't stop it.
Yes. The horse analogy is perfect because it's like you even when you start like kind of talking about it, you are like not keeping up with it. We'd say we're in the belly of the whale or whatever, but like you're being like pulled. And then
Yeah.
at one point you convert and you're in control to it. And once you're in control, oh, it's a great place to be, but it is a complete journey and it's not one that just is linear. It kind of has ebbs and flows, but I think you have to be in that right mental space to say, I want to do something different because what I'm doing today isn't working. And that's really where I was at. It was just, I'm just not working the way life is not going the way I wanted to. So let's try something
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Courtney, okay, so that's a lot of build up. We've been talking about your story. So let's just give you the rep. So for
Right
everyone
on.
listening, this is exactly the story that Courtney's been working on for the last about year and a half, and that she's going to present on the TEDx stage in Ohio in just a few weeks. So Courtney, I'm just going to watch and listen. Floor is yours.
Awesome. May 29, 2019. Hey, Todd, come in and say goodnight to our baby girl. Todd came over and started his typical routine. He picked our baby girl up from her aqua blue high chair. He put her jammies on, zipped up her sleep sack, said her prayers, and sang a little made up lullaby before saying, "Good night, Tinky Butt." Todd called her that because he always says she was too cute to be a stinky butt. He laid her down for bed, and then he went out to the garage, his drinking dungeon, the place he went to self cope after Afghanistan, the war he physically came home from, but emotionally never left behind, the place where demons hid. I braced myself for what might come next because drunk Todd was like Jekyll and Hyde. I joined him in the garage and it reeked of cigarette smoke and beer. He called me every vicious name a husband should never say to his wife. Normally, when that happened, I'd walk away and that would calm things down. Not this time. This time, Todd follows me inside the kitchen. This time, he shoves me into the wall. And this time, he runs up our staircase and leaps right back down. And this time, he presses a cold, loaded pistol hard into my forehead. Any last words? And the only thing going through my mind was, please take care of my baby girl. Please take care of my baby girl. Please take care of my baby girl. Courtney, I said, do you have any last words? No. I can see my tears ricocheting off the counter, and I am waiting to die. And then I feel the gun lift. I look up and I see the barrel is in Todd's mouth. The smell of gunpowder fills the air. I watch Todd crumble over our baby girl's aqua blue high chair. The next thing I know, first responders and officers are at her home. I run upstairs, startling our baby girl awake, and she's staring at me with these intense, soulful brown eyes, oblivious to what just happened. I pick her up out of her crib and I go out to our front porch and we wait. And this time, I don't even know what it is I'm waiting for. The officer walks up to us. "Mrs. Stasko, I am so sorry, but your husband didn't make it. Do you want to go see him one last time?" I go inside and I kneel beside Todd. I hold his cold hands. I slide his wedding band from his finger onto mine. A gurney rolls Todd out of the house, the hearse door shut, and all the noise stops. I took a leave from work and moved in with my dad, and at first my closest friends and family helped me grieve, but then came the grief after the grief, the one where you are all alone. 5 weeks blurred by, and one night I was sitting alone in my dad's garage and fireworks were going off in the distance. I was splitting apart, hiding in the darkness alone. That scene in the kitchen by the aqua blue high chair was replaying over and over. I felt powerless, hopeless, lifeless. I looked down at the 54 pills I had in my hand, thinking, that'll do the trick. Everyone will understand. Just get it over with, Courtney. I imagined my dad finding in a note that said, "I'm sorry." And that's when I heard my baby girl crying. I remembered Hope, my baby girl. Her name is Hope. Hope needed me, and I needed Hope. Years passed by, and I stayed alive by hiding from the truth, and every truth I refused to face became another link in the chain, weighing me down. To break a chain, you have to be willing to face the truth it is built around, and for me, that truth arrived while I was sitting watching a movie version of Romeo and Juliet. And at some point in the story, I realized that Shakespeare understood something. You see, when Shakespeare cut off the character, he didn't explain it, he didn't analyze it, he didn't search for meaning, he just wrote, "He dies." I realized I could spend the rest of my life chasing answers that might never come, or I could accept the truth I already had. Todd died. Shakespeare helped me understand the truth could be simple even if the questions were not, and even if the questions never stopped. "Hey, Courtney, when are you coming back to work?" What could I have done to stop it? "It's been 5 years, Courtney. Shouldn't you be over this by now?" And then came a question from Hope, who was 6 years old, staring at me with those intense, soulful brown eyes. "Mommy, how did Daddy die?" I loved that question as much as I hated it, because for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't being asked to explain Todd's death or how I dealt with it. I was simply being asked to tell the truth. The problem is, I didn't know how to explain it. I wanted to tell the truth, but the truth required me to look at the chains I was choosing to carry alone for years. The shame from a violent relationship, the trauma of being held at gunpoint by the man I loved, the constant questioning of my own worth. And then I reconnected with Holly Higgins, a Gold Star mom who lost her son Danny. She has the kind of warmth a mother gives off when she looks at you with unconditional love, the kind of warmth my mom carried before she passed away. The first time I ever told my story, Holly looked at me, Courtney, it must hurt. No advice, no judgment, no questions, just presence. Holly guided me with my story, and as she did, she helped me break more chains, and she gave me the courage to share my story more. The more that I shared, the more the chains fell, link by link. The more the chains fell, the more I gained clarity, because chains only have weight if we keep carrying them alone. And somewhere inside each of us, there is still something stronger waiting to break free from the chains. There is still and always will be hope. Sometimes hope sounds like a baby crying, and sometimes it looks like a stranger who understands you, but sometimes hope becomes a story because of a question from a 6-year-old kid. When I answered Hope's question, I wrote it as a story, and that story became Starry's journey. And somehow that story kept growing into a community, into a mission, into a nonprofit called Starry's Hope, created to support families grieving the loss of military members, veterans, and first responders. Starry's Hope was officially founded on May 29, 2025, exactly 6 years to the day that we lost Todd. I wish I could tell you that my poetic heart planned it that way, but it didn't. When I saw the date on the paperwork, I realized I had a choice. I could see May 29 as the day everything died, or I could choose to reclaim it with hope. So 1 year later, on May 29, 2026, I chose to publish Starry's Journey. And the day that once represented the worst moment of my life became the day that gave something back. Not because the pain was easier, not because my grief disappeared, but because hope finally had a place on that date too. Breaking chains taught me that life doesn't move forward through perfect answers. It actually moves forward through simple truths. In my darkest moment, I only had 3 words: I am sorry. Shakespeare gave me 2. He dies. Holly, she gave me 3. That must hurt. And somewhere along the way, I found 2 more. I choose. Because of that, I still have hope, and hope still has me. I'm still shedding links of the chains, but I refuse to hide anymore. And maybe your chains are not my chains, but if you are sitting here today carrying something alone, I hope you hear this. Hope begins the moment we stop hiding the truth and we start sharing it.
Ugh, where's my? If I was our colleague Michael Davis, I'd have the applause machine. But I'm not tech savvy enough to have an applause machine. Courtney, thank you. My goodness. What's super interesting is the first time I heard that story, it was almost twice as long.
It was
Right?
probably more.
Yeah, yeah. But isn't that so? So I'd love now to dig in a little bit, because that was probably one of your biggest challenges prepping for this TED, is that they have a very strict time policy, right? So talk to me about the process you've been going through to get your story down from the 20 whatever minutes it was down to kind of this, this really tight 10-11 minute version.
It's been a journey. When it first started, it was like over 5,000 words. Like, I'm a writer, right? So I write things, and I could explain a lot of things in words. And the first time I repped it, it was uh, extremely long. And the process of that as a writer, like if you're looking at it for yourself and there's suggestions to cut stuff out, you kind of get, me personally, I was like, that's gold. Why are we cutting that line out? That line is beautiful. But once you realize that it's not really about what you're holding on to, it's about what sticks with someone else.
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to start trimming stuff down. And so part of that came, let me tell it to someone. And what stuck with you, what resonated with you, um were there repetitive things, and really what was the overall message? Because when I first wrote it, there was a lot more meat to it. It was kind of building some other things I went through, whether it was losing my mom or my daughter being sick and all these other things that are maybe stories of their own. It was, what do I want the overall message of this TED Talk to be? And then to
Hmm.
pull that through. And at one point, I had like three metaphors going on through it too. And it was pick one of the metaphors, which you helped me with actually, Jason, on the tail end. But it was like pick one metaphor and pull that through. And once you kind of picked a focus, it was easy to kind of trim it. But it was rewriting, resubmitting, rewriting, resubmitting. I'm on probably total version number 40 something now.
Yeah.
So it was constant edit, rewrite, sit. And there are
Yeah.
times where it's like, I just don't feel like doing this, but the timeline kind of makes you realize you don't have time to not do it. So you just kind of keep pushing towards it.
Deadlines are your friends.
Yes, absolutely.
You're circling something too that I know we work a lot on, Courtney, which is that often, Shakespeare again, right? Brevity is the soul of wit, right? That um, when you finally are able to change your focus from yourself to the listener, the reader, when you're thinking about their experience, it suddenly gets way more clear what needs to stay, what's essential to the story, and what you're realizing is, Hemingway's little darlings, right? The stuff that even if it is gold, put it in the parking lot, slap it in a folder somewhere, come back to it later, right? But
Yeah.
for the sake of the listener of this particular story, what has to be there and what can be let go? Because almost always you'll find that a story is made sharper, punchier, stronger, more effective by tightening it.
Mm. Less is more. And when you realize that, it really changes the narrative. It almost becomes it became a challenge for me in a good way. It was, how can I make the same message with as little words as possible?
Yeah.
And every word that carries weight. And when you do that, it's like, oh, I could trim out these three words here and these 10 words here. It wasn't one massive edit at a time. It was little edits over time.
Yeah. And like you said too, realizing, oh, I've got three metaphors competing for attention. How can I just coalesce that into one, the one that really drives through? Yeah.
Yep.
Um, this was really interesting to me too, Courtney, is at one point you were saying that, and I'm sure people hearing this story for the first time have to wonder, like, what do you go through when you tell it, right? What's the cost to tell it? And there was a point where repping it was really difficult for you because it just kept almost like picking at the wound instead of, like you said, sharing it. So, what was some of the strategies or things you discovered along the way that helped you move from the reps being difficult and something you didn't want to do into, oh no, now I'm riding the horse and I want to get this thing polished?
Well, thank God I have a good therapist, because she would help process. She would help the overall weekly strategy on this. But really, there was a lot of different tools. Uh, the first half of my story goes into the scene that creates a lot of trauma. Sometimes
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch it. I would have to step away from it for a few weeks. Doesn't mean I wasn't completely off of it for a few weeks. I would work on the back end. I would start repping the back end and see how I could tighten it up, or see how I could create a little bit more pull through or something of that nature. But really, I think the biggest thing that helped it wasn't something until me and you started repping together, which unfortunately came a little bit later in the game. But it was, we changed the tense. We took a scene where we go from present tense to past, or past tense to present tense to past tense, and the scene where Todd kills himself and almost kills me, we changed that to present tense. And what that did is it really helped me understand that I was the narrator in in this whole story. And once you are able to see yourself as the narrator, you self remove yourself just a tad. You're not going
Hmm.
back to it. But the other thing I like to tell people, and it's almost like I forget that my story carries a lot of trauma and weight. And I get reminded of this when I tell someone it the first time. Maybe it's not the TED version, but it's just what happened to me, and their face, seeing their facial expressions is like, what?
Yeah.
But it's like, for me, it's this is a scene that lives in me all day, every day. It's not something I don't visualize. It's not something I don't go through. It's not something that I don't have flashbacks of. And it's there. Whether I like to say it is or not, it's there. And so for me, finding that narration to echo it actually helps me process when it's going in my brain. It helps it not have as much weight as it once used to have. Even though I can't unfortunately get rid of it and just throw it out, it just is good to know that it doesn't carry the same weight that it once used to. And so, just finding some of those tools to go through it
Yeah.
really does help the process of it.
Yeah, this is something I'd offer to anyone else out there who's listening. This is why the journaling or why the saying things out loud, because you find new ways to get your arms around it. Uh, I know exactly what you're talking about, Courtney, with what we discovered together. Um, and it's about that narrative distance again, right? Um, that when you tell the story, the trap can be that you end up like reliving it as opposed to witnessing it. And it does. I know that that sounds like I'm playing semantics, but you see it in people's bodies when they make that shift. So Courtney is telling her story, and even though we dropped into present tense, the other thing we did, we started repeating that line this time,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, that because only a narrator has the power to say this time. Only a narrator is aware of larger three-dimensional space-time and history and future and able to pinpoint this timestamp. Whereas Courtney in the story is only in the moment. She can't have that 360-degree view. She's inside it as opposed to outside it, witnessing, observing, commenting upon. It's almost like there's the power of the storyteller is that even though it's your story, you're pointing at a past self. Courtney today, the storyteller, has the she's in the she has that safe distance from the events, so that she's almost part of the audience now, pointing back at, looking back at, observing, witnessing, as opposed to reliving, and that protects you. And it also transfers the responsibility of the imagination to the audience, which is where we want it. Right. So it was so cool to see that kind of that penny drop for you, because all of a sudden you were like, well, now I can rep it all I need to practice, and I don't like end up
Yes.
a huddling little quivering thing in the corner, right? I can actually do it.
Yes, it was amazing that it took two words, right? And those two words, the this time, thank you for bringing that up. The this time really did like change the whole narration of it for me. And I remember talking about that with Michael Davis about how I was like, it was just two words, but those two words changed everything with my relationship with that moment in that scene.
Yes, because again, we talk about this a lot, the triangle, right? That you, the storyteller, you have a relationship with your story and a relationship with the audience, right? And of course, the audience's relationship with the story, we have no say. But if your relationship with the story isn't healthy, then the other stuff kind of falls apart too. So again, it was really cool to see how just giving you a little bit more narrative control, putting a tighter bit in the mouth of the horse, give you a little more
Yes,
control over the story.
that is what it
We're gonna
was.
keep beating
Absolutely.
that metaphor up too, are we?
It's great.
All right, so give us a sense of 3 weeks away. I guess I want to pivot to your book here in a second, but give us a sense of what you're going through in terms of you're going to give a TEDx. You're going to be in that red circle. You're going to be recorded and blasted out onto YouTube. And like, how are you feeling?
It's a wild ride on that horse it is, but it's been it's I'm anxious, but I'm also very comfortable.
Mm,
And I thought I would be more nervous by now. And I'm not, but it's also like this is something that I could give up today, and would I hit every single line in it on on point? Probably not. But would the overall message stay the same? Absolutely. And so that gives me a lot of confidence in it. I don't know if I would say the same thing like 2 days before. I'll probably be freaking out, but 3 weeks before, I still have a sense of composure. Um, and being on stage in front of an audience, that part actually doesn't make me too nervous. What makes me a little bit nervous is that this isn't like something I'm taking and posting to the internet. And 2 days later, I'm like, I want to take that down. It's just like, no, this is once it's in the internet, it's going out. And that's that. And so that part has been a little nerve wracking just throughout the whole process, just because it's not something you're controlling once it's out there. But I'm excited. I'm completely humbled. The opportunity, as a business professional, TED Talks have always been something I've gravitated to. And I was always like, oh, I would love to do one, but I never thought I would be giving one. And now the opportunity is here. And it's not anything with my business professionalism, it's everything with my personal passion, my mission, and where my life has taken me. And I'm just completely grateful that I am given the opportunity to speak on that red circle on behalf of victims of domestic violence, on behalf of suicide survivors, on behalf of just people in the military, and a mom, and just someone who has went through trauma and tried to repurpose that trauma to give an example to my daughter. It's just something that I do not take lightly and I won't take for granted. And I will enjoy every second of that moment.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay. Speaking of that, speaking of your daughter, perfect segue. Because you wrote a book,
I did.
Starry's Journey, right? In response to Hope asking you, how did daddy die? And again,
Yes.
how do I explain this? And I love again that your instinct was, well, you put it in a story, right? I mean, there's something so just, yeah, especially for a 6-year-old, like but a story lets us get really close to the truth and access it, right? So talk about that process. Talk about the process of writing that book. And then you mentioned in the speech in your talk a little bit, how did writing that book turn into a nonprofit and a publishing empire? Like what's that journey?
It's been a lot of fun. The things that I'm learning that I never thought I would learn,
Right,
is
right.
just is just great. But really, it was interesting because Hope, she's now about to be 8, but about 2 years
Yeah.
ago, she just turned 6, and she woke me up. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, like, and she woke me
Oh,
up
wow.
concerned as can be. And it was, Mommy, how did daddy die? And I was like, what time is it? And why are we doing this? I'm like, can I have a cup of coffee first? And I was like, she knew high level that he died from a mental disease, or like a brain disease is really where it was. And I told her that I didn't know how to answer that question, but I would get her an answer, and she let it go. She was good with that. She was cool, but I promised her that I would get her an answer. So, it's kind of like what Scott says, how far will you go to make a promise? And it's like,
Mhm.
I gotta figure this out. And so I reached out to Scott and Monty, and I said, if anyone would know someone who's had to explain this to a kid, it would be them. So I reached out to them and I asked, hey, do you guys know anyone who has had to go through kind of like what I went through to help explain how to answer this question to Hope? And they took a lot of time to get back to me because they were trying to go through their Rolodex of their contacts. And they got back to me and said, unfortunately, they didn't really have anyone, which was also like, that was a red flag to me because if they didn't know anyone, there's a gap here, right? It's not, and it's to
Yeah.
nothing of them. It's just to like, they know a lot of people. And they did link me to reach out to Carrie Ellis to talk about, she was in the support group who had a lot of suicide survivors, whether it was parents or spouses. And so she brought me into this. We meet every other week. It's a virtual group, and they're my people. I've only known them for about 2 years, and they are my family. The love I've had for these people is just immense. But I get on the horn and I tell my story very high level. And I was like, I'm looking for someone who could help. And nobody in this group could help. They said it was my son who died, or our kids were grown, and I was just like, well, crap. So then I started going and searching, and I'm not finding anything to really help me. Mind you, there were some resources that I didn't quite have at that time that I have now come across, but at the time I just couldn't really find anything. And um, parallel that with Holly reaching out to me a couple months later to go to this workshop. I went to the workshop and I came home after sharing my story out loud for the first time outside of therapy, and I was a wreck. The amount of
Mm-hmm.
tension that I had in my back and neck and head. I was like, why would did I do this? This was such a terrible idea. That week was just awful. But then after I processed it, it was the complete opposite feeling. It was freeing. It was the most
Yeah.
free I have felt in several years. And I went to, if I can't find it, I can write. I love haikus. I love writing. I'm sitting at the table and my daughter was learning about space and she had this like constellation of things on the table. I was like, what if I just write this little story about this little girl who goes on a journey to find her daddy and see if there's a way I could bridge some type of connection. And it just all spitfired from there. And within 1 hour, I wrote the concept of Starry's journey, which is about this little star who goes on a journey to find her daddy's light. And it starts the ideation of suicide, depression, but more importantly, grief and connection. And it doesn't matter if the person's here or not, you still could connect to them. And so I wrote this story and I was like, well, now what the heck do I do with it? So I share this in my support group and I just said, like, kind of what happened. And Carrie, being the saint that she is, she's like, are you looking for an illustrator? And I'm like, Carrie, like, no, like I'm not. I'm not trying to do anything with this. I'm just not sure. But like pass over a contact, maybe I'll reconsider. A couple weeks later, I reach out to Emma Brannon, which is who she connected me with, and Emma had a dream of being a children's illustrator. Um, and me and her connect. She's an Air Force daughter. She just within one conversation, I'm like, this is meant to be. And so I submit the script to her, and she comes out with some concept art, and I fell in love with little Starry and what she created her to be. And from that point on, Hope became the creative designer. So Hope was the final say on every Starry's hair color, the earrings that she was wearing, the dress. Hope had final say on it all. Emma, Hope, and I were just all masterminding it together. And as it was becoming this beautiful story, like the words are great, but the illustrations are just next level amazing. Like Emma is absolutely brilliant in what she does. I was like, this is bigger than just Hope. Like, this is the goal was to get this for Hope for her seventh birthday. And I got the prototype the week of her birthday. But as
Oh
this,
man.
yeah, it was awesome. It was the best gift I've ever given when she opened it on her birthday. Like, the video I have of her giggling because she knew it was coming. Like, she didn't quite know she was going to get it, but she knew what we were working on. She understood the assignment, kind of. And it just was the most amazing thing. And as we were going through this, I was like, this could help so many other people because if I had a hard time finding a connection and finding this, there are other people out there. Hundreds, over 100,000 people have died by suicide since 9/11 from the military. Like, you can't tell me that they're not young kids and young families out there trying to get the same answers that my daughter is. And so, Starry's Journey is the name of the book. Starry is my daughter Hope. And so that is where the nonprofit Starry is Hope came from. And our whole mission is to donate this book to families. Our first mission is to donate it to 529 families for May 29, because that is the day Todd died, but that is also the day that our articles of incorporation were accepted by the state of Ohio. And
Mm-hmm.
so it just made total sense to say our first mission is to find 529 families and gift this book to them at no cost to them, just as a way to bridge a gap of connection and understand grief. And it has been such a fun ride from that all moving forward. It's been awesome.
Amazing. Well, I will get all the details and put them in the show notes later, but um, when Hope read the book for the first time,
Oh,
did she did you answer? Did you keep your promise? Did she understand? Does she still have more questions? Like, what was kind of her reading the book is kind of the culminating event of her asking you the question.
mhm.
So, because a lot of this is new to me, like I haven't pressed you on some of these things before, so I'm just like, oh, I didn't know that Hope was the creative director. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but when she read it, did she feel like you had answered her question?
Absolutely, she did. There was this connection between the two of them too that became a lot stronger. And there's pictures in there of things that we've never seen, right? So, um, she was 9 months old when Todd died, and little Starry is a little kid. And so there's these scenes where a little girl is hugging her dad, and there's this picture that she knows it's her with her dad. And so it created a sense of peace. And since then, we started talking about suicide as well. So she now knows her dad died by suicide. And she knows that all she has to do to connect to him is to think about him and to look at the stars and to have this creative mind. She's such a creative human. So to have this creative mind is how she connects to her dad. And that book, she is like my number one advocate, my number one fan. She goes to school, she talks about it, she tells her teacher she's going to bring her a copy. So now all these teachers at her school have copies. And then she'll bring stickers to her friends and she'll be like, "This is me. I'm Starry." She cosplays as Starry. She's like the number one fan. It is like the coolest thing to witness. She'll color pictures. And she is just like totally on board with it. And yes, it did answer a question. It wasn't as direct per se, but couple
Right,
that with some of the direct conversations that I was having with her, she no longer has this curious side. She's very well aware of what happened and also that there is still connection there. And that's the
right.
coolest thing about it is that connective piece of you still could love someone who's no longer here. They could still be here for you. It's just a little different. And you just have to be a little bit of a dreamer to connect there, and I that's what this book encourages.
I have to think too that the book allowed you to then have the more direct discussions, right? That
It
set the
does.
set a context, set a place of safety, set a place of metaphorical understanding, so that the the direct conversations lose their bluntness or their rawness, and you can actually have, it sounds like, a fruitful conversation about the stuff that is the nitty gritty.
It is,
Again,
and
the power of the story for us to get close, right?
it is, and you're reading it, and so you're going through like you're reading this to them, so you're going through it together. And I've had testimonies of other families now, and they'll talk
Mm.
about what this has done for them. One of my friends, she lost her son. She has grandkids, and she was reading this to her grandkids. Her daughter, so was sitting there, and the grandkids. She was a 5 and a 3 year old, and she was reading it to them, and it opened up how much the nephew connected to his uncle and how much he missed him. And there was this whole dialogue that came from this, and um, it just spit this whole conversation of healing, and they were all crying and in a good way, right? And it was just like these testimonies that you start hearing are just like this is what it's about. And I've heard from other people, just even when sharing this story, some strangers sitting next to me, and then you find out that they lost their son to military suicide, and you're like, "Oh my God, I got you now. Like, you're my people."
Mhm.
And the amount of sharing your story and how that connects you to other people, whether it's through this book or even how this book came to be, it's just incredible what is coming out of this. It is all divine. It is all like, I like to say, a red carpet is laid out and I'm just walking down it. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm going down that red carpet and it feels great. And it's just like, who's meant to be will be. And the universe is guiding that,
Yeah.
and it's just been an absolutely amazing thing of storytelling, the power of storytelling in its finest. Yeah.
Awesome. Before I turn to the wrap up spotlight here, I do want to give you a minute because I think something that happens, the stigma around this, right? I remember very specifically giving you a note at one point to put Todd's name back in a few more times, um, because people who die by suicide often get stuck with like a stigma, or that the only way they're remembered is through that lens of violence and self-harm. And I can only imagine that writing this book also paints a portrait of Todd, not just for your daughter, but for other people. So I've actually never asked you this. I'm curious, like, just how did you and Todd meet, and what was
Yeah.
before Afghanistan and all that stuff happened to him? Who was he?
Yeah. So Todd and I, we actually met online. It was like when online dating first became a thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like, but we lived by each other. And I remember I was getting ready for our first official date and I went shopping with my mom and she was like, something's different about this guy. You are really excited. I'm like, Mom, like he makes me laugh so much. Like he just is so funny. We video chatted and all the things. And he makes me laugh so much. Like he just made everything was funny. He was just as funny as they can be. And he had this chuckle about him that was so familiar. And we went on our first date. We went and shot pool and we had a blast. And a couple weeks later, he officially asked me to be his girlfriend. And when I got home after the date, he like made it Facebook official. And I was like, oh my God, like he made it Facebook official, which was like a really cool thing, right? Like back then it was like a big thing. And
Oh my
we just
gosh.
fell in a lot of love and we had a lot that first couple years we had a lot of fun and things were just really good and he made me feel beautiful and he helped me with some of my insecurities and he was such a supporting person for me, especially with my career, and we had to make a decision. I got a job offer to relocate us about 3 hours away, and he was doing pretty good on his career and his job, and he decided that he would move with us or move with
Mm,
me, so I didn't have to choose between him and a job, and that's kind of what trajected our relationship into a whole different place. And so, it was just a very the dating period was a lot of fun, and he was sweet, he was kind, he was quirky and goofy, and there was this side of him that was just as good as the dark side was as bad. It was like
mm,
no different than what I say with Jekyll and Hyde. It was truly just he had this amazing charismatic side of him. He was kind, he was funny, he cared a lot about people. And he started to delve into self coping, and that just created this spiral. And he just wasn't getting the
yeah.
help that he really needed. Unfortunately, if I think if he would have had some right interference there, it could have been a different story, but he just didn't have it. And but he was a very good guy. He was very kind.
Good. Thank you. I'm so glad that that is now public record forever on the internet.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Awesome, Courtney. Just thank you so much for your generosity and your courage here. I have just this fun little spotlight here to do with you to wrap up. Um, so, if you could ask any one person any one question, who would it be, and what would you ask?
Yeah. You know, that question is so hard for me. I think it's like I can't get out of anyone else but my mom. Because my mom was like someone who was I was the youngest out of four kids. I was the only girl. I had three older brothers, and so my
Oh
mom and I
wow.
were very, very close. Losing her just like 2 years before Todd died, that was very difficult to not have her around through the rest of that. But I would just ask my mom. She saw something in me that I can't see, right? And so I would like to know for her is like, what do you see in me that I can't see? Like, what
Mm,
about me do you see that my eyes just can't see that maybe help my confidence or help my understanding a little bit better? Because I am my own self critic, right, as we all are. And I would just love to have, as a parent now, because my daughter was born after my mom passed away, and I see my child as like the most perfect being. It would almost, I would love to see like what was your perspective of me,
yeah.
and hear everything that has happened since she's passed away, just get her take on it, and understand where she's at with it would just be probably the most comforting thing in the entire world.
Awesome. What a good answer. All right. Question two. What is the best advice that you have ever taken?
There's a couple, but the one that's popping out of me right now is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable piece is there for a reason. And I think the more you push into it, now it's not like your gut saying this is off, I don't need to do this. It's not that. Like if it's off and something feels sketchy, like it's time to get out. But like if there is something in there that just is uncomfortable because it's different, it's almost like double down on that, because that is how we grow and that is how we explore. And when we explore, things become limitless. And it has been a lot of fun exploring that uncomfortable side. And so that would probably be my best one right now.
Love it. Love it. All right. And last, how can listeners or viewers find out more about Courtney, find out more about Starry's Hope, find out more about Starry's journey, buy the book, donate to the nonprofit, recommend families to get the book? Just hit us with all the details of where we should go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So Starry is Hope is a 501c3. The website is starryishope.org. And we are currently looking for families to donate the book to, but we are also looking for donations. So we are running a campaign to get enough donations to donate 529 books. We're
Right.
a little over halfway there, which is
Nice.
incredible. Yes, it's incredible. So we are still looking to tighten that up and finalize that. And then if you want to purchase the book, with which proceeds will also go back to Starry is Hope, the book can be purchased on my personal publishing website, which is betweenstarstories.com. So those two websites, they all kind of loop back and forth to each other. So if you go to Between Star Stories, you can link to Starry is Hope, but that is how you purchase the book. And it will get shipped to you. And it's a beautiful book. It's hardcover, it's sleeved, it has gold embossing or silver embossing. It is an absolutely gorgeous book. I am biased, but the warehouse manager for where we print them out also said that it is one of the prettiest books he's seen. And they publish a lot of books. So I'm taking his opinion and not being biased.
That's not biased at all. That's totally objective. Oh, that's great. And of course, once your TED link is live, I will do a little follow-up and send that out to everyone too. But just break all eggs with that, Courtney. Again, thank you so much for your time today and for your generosity with this. Best of luck with TED and with the book and everything else, and just all gratitude, all admiration, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Page and Stage is a production of Canon Story Company, the creative studio dedicated to the art and impact of storytelling. So if you're a playwright, speaker, performer, or memoirist, or even if you're a curious reader or audience member, come check out canonstory.com for coaching, courses, publishing, and podcasts, all in the service of healing the world one story at a time. I'm Jason Cannon, and I cannot wait to hear your story.